Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Sam Stone. Chuck Warren out of studio today, so as has happened once before, and making his triumphant return, Seth Leibsohn, my very good friend, and the host of the Seth Leibsohn Show, is on every afternoon here in Arizona. You need to be tuning into that, 990 AM, KKNT. It's, I think, one of the smartest shows on television. And as a program that loves smart people, our first guest up today fits that bill 100%. Bob McClure, President and CEO of the James Madison Institute, a leading public policy organization out of Florida, focuses on economic freedom and opportunity for all Floridians. And we're talking today about an issue that I think a lot of people around this country care about. A lot of Republicans, a lot of legislatures are dealing with really every day right now. And that is elections overall. But in every state I talk to, Bob, what we're told is, well, we're trying to do something like Florida. 20 years ago, that would have been an unheard of statement in local government across this country. But today it is the refrain in virtually every red state you talk to. I want to go back a little bit because you were first appointed by, I believe it was Jeb Bush, correct?
Yes.
So you were appointed by Jeb Bush to the Florida Elections Commission. That was right after the whole Bush v. Gore, the hanging chads. So give folks who may have forgotten about that a little background on what got you into this space in the first place.
Well, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys having me on today. You know, people forget that, 2000 was a complete disaster, not only for our own state, but for the country as a whole. As the great Tim Russert said back in the day, Florida, Florida, Florida. That's what it comes down to. And it hung in the balance in terms of whether it's going to be George Bush or Al Gore. Back then, Florida did not have in place the reforms that we have now. It was utter and complete chaos, particularly in the three largest counties in the state by population: Miami-Dade County, which is obviously Miami, Broward County, which would be Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach County, which would be Palm Beach. For those of your listeners and your viewers, that's the southeast coast on the Atlantic Ocean, those three counties. Mm-hmm. And in those counties, probably back then, 5 million people, probably almost a third of the state's population. And so it was a complete disaster. It was a disaster for our state. It came down to Supreme Courts, both in the state of Florida and at the United States level, making decisions to stop and start counts. And ultimately, George Bush was the winner.
Give us an overview of what Florida's voting system looked like at that time, if you can.
Well, it was interesting. The technology obviously was not nearly what it is today. There was no mail-in voting. We have mail-in voting, which, we can talk about at a different point. The ballots were far more complicated and harder to understand. If you remember, there was this big discussion about a large group of voters voted for, I think it was Pat Buchanan was the third party candidate. And whether or not they meant to vote for Al Gore. And that was part of the larger discussion. The ballots were complicated. There was no electronic tabulation in the way there is today, which I would love to get into at some point. Kind of the early voting, there was nothing like what we have today. It's very structured. It's pre-canvassed. Voter rolls. We kind of took voter rolls as they were. Now cleaning up the voter rolls is a really important component of if you want to get elections correct in one's own state, you have to clean up the voter rolls. People didn't really think about that very much back then. And then, as I said, there was no vote by mail. So it was really, or very little of it, I guess I should say. So it was really a very different dynamic. Today, it's much more technologically driven, but it's also got tremendous numbers of safeguards in place. Back then, in 2000, there was such a reliance on the human eye and the human hand to tabulate, to look at hanging chads and those kinds of things. Today, it's much more automated, but in the best way, with a lot of safeguards in place.
Well, so I want to talk about that, because that's where sometimes some of the activists and others on our side are very, concerned about mechanical tabulation, about electronic tabulation. Sure. I don't particularly worry about that, because our process, at least in Maricopa County, is that both parties have observers there. They pull a handful of precincts randomly out of a hat, basically, and then they hand count those precincts to confirm. Right. And if there's any discrepancy, then we have to go back and recount everything, and you're going to get a much bigger problem. That's never happened. How does Florida do that, and how do they address that concern?
You're talking about specifically mail-in voting?
Yes.
Well, it's really interesting. We have, there's a lot more transparency and accountability. So, for example, my 85-year-old father gets a request by mail because he can't drive anymore. So he gets the ballot. It's very clear. You have to you sign an affidavit saying it is you who is voting. The ballots are very simple in terms of understanding, as opposed to what they used to be. You then have you safeguard it in an envelope that can't be broken. You then sign over the top of it, and you mail it in. So they have signature cards on file. They compare your signature card with that signature card. It has to be exactly the same way, in the way that the election offices have it. If not, it doesn't count, or at least it's put to the side.
And where does that signature, I'm sorry, I'm going to get technical here for some of our guests, but where does that signature on that signature card come from? Is that specifically from their voter registration?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the only one that's used then?
That is correct. So you have the full name of the person, right? So John Smith the third, or whatever, however he or she wants to put it on there. And then you have their signature file on there as well. Their signature is on file as well. So you have these things the signature that shows, and if it's not the exact name with the exact correct signature, by comparison, it's put to the side and is not counted. Then you can go online and follow it. You can follow where it is. Has it been received? Has it not been received? Has it been counted? When will it be counted? And you can follow it online all the way through the process. And then at the local offices, there are Republicans and Democrats who are watching as these are opened and as these are counted. And here's one of the really important components, two things related to mail-in voting, in addition to all of the other safeguards in place. And again, nothing's perfect. Some of your listeners and viewers are going to say, hey, but you could do this or you could do that. And there is some truth to that. Nothing's perfect. But having said that, two things are really important as it relates to mail-in voting. One is, if it's not received by 7:30 the night of the election, that's it. There's no received. That's not postmarked. That is received. It must be received 7:30 the night of the election. The second component with that I think is really interesting is that they start counting the votes when they come in. So we have 2 weeks of early voting, and if you have a Johnny Go-Getter who mails his or her ballot in the first day and it's received 3 days later, it's immediately counted. Now, you don't know how they voted, but every day you can go on Twitter and Democratic and Republican campaign managers will say 10,000 Democrats voted today. 9,300 Republicans voted today. So you combine with the pre-vote, the pre-counting, the pre-canvassing, and having those votes in with individually being able to follow it online. And then at any moment, you can go there, you can, double check any way you want, but following it online, that way, the night of the election, you've got, 2 million votes out of 8 million cast in a presidential election year, 2, 3, 4 million votes already counted. And so there's none of this delay 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 6 weeks later, and no confusion.
Now, and that includes the signature verification has already been performed by that point, right?
Correct.
What about maybe our system's a little different, so maybe these terms are different. What about curing of provisionals or other spoiled ballots?
They are, so if I vote, okay, and I go online and my vote is not counted by day of, I can go in and figure out, if I want, why has my vote not been counted? So you can go in and say, I mailed this in or I dropped it in a ballot box or what have you, and you can go in and find out why has your vote not been counted.
So we do something very similar. In that regard, I want to go back. We just have about 2 minutes left in this segment. We're going to carry on this discussion, but the start of the process when you mentioned your father gets his ballot by mail, is that automatically mailed to all? Is it a permanent list of early ballot recipients, or do they need to request it in each election cycle?
You must request it in each election cycle. It is not automatic, and if you don't request it, you don't get it, which I think also adds a level of safeguard into the situation. I'll give you another story. My daughter lived in Atlanta in a rental house, very nice neighborhood. This was before Georgia's election reforms. Nice neighborhood. She lived with 3 other young ladies in their 20s. She got 6 ballots. I believe it was Trump against Biden. I don't think it was Hillary. I think it was Trump versus Biden. She got 6 different ballots mailed to her to that address with 6 different names on it. That does not happen in Florida. You must request, it must be granted, and then the ballot is mailed. That
is one of the biggest issues we have here in Arizona, Seth. A lot of people don't realize we just literally discovered this in our office this year. Arizona, the carrier envelope has a box you're supposed to check. If it goes to a bad address, you check it, put it back in the mail. USPS software doesn't read that. So it just keeps going back to the voter. You can get the same ballot through the USPS 5 times in a row. It's a total mess on that end. Florida much smarter than us in that regard. We're going to continue on with more from Bob McClure, President and CEO of the James Madison Institute, here in just a moment. Stay tuned. Breaking Battlegrounds coming right back.
My name is Patrick Byrne, domestic extremist threat number 1. Or not. Perhaps I'm just somebody who's willing to say the emperor has no clothes. You can decide for yourself.
Patrick Byrne, they're following everything that you've been working on.
Yes, sir. Understood.
You may know of me as the CEO of this $2 billion e-commerce company, but really, I have this other life.
You have an unusual relationship with the United States government?
Sir, why are you bringing this up?
The FBI needed me to set up a bribe.
We can't have agents running around creating crimes.
It would violate too many rules for us to do it, but if you're willing to go do it, we'll look the other way.
Hello, my name is Maria Putina.
Then I would make it happen. Instead of being happy, they say,
just let it play.
What? Let it play?
Now, I know this may look like the Deep Throat scene from All the President's Men, but where do you think that stuff comes from? These things happen.
What you think you know.
I was encouraged to have a relationship.
What you think you are.
And as it heated up,
I'm going to meet the Trumps.
I was starting to realize the feds were using Maria to smudge up the Republican Party. And they were using me to use Maria. And this truth is going to be so explosive.
Erase every moment from your memory.
If you do this long enough, you begin to feel like an enemy of your own country.
They're going to arrest this Russian grad student so they could say, no, there is an actual Russian at the center of our Russian collusion drama. A civilization all begins with the rule of law. And once that gets corrupted, it's like my worst fears have just been realized. I don't know, maybe I'm just being sensitive.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Continuing on now with Dr. Bob McClure, President and CEO of the James Madison Institute, talking about all the reforms, Seth, that Florida's elections have undergone over the course of the last decade plus. Pretty amazing, and the big difference for me is the confidence. I don't hear people questioning Florida's elections.
One thing, and I don't know if this observation rings true for you, Dr. McClure, or you, Sam, that I'm just observing as I'm listening, is it looks like a lot of the reforms Florida has put through, Dr. McClure, with your advice and help, no doubt, if I have this right, it asks a lot actually of the voter, a lot more of the voter than we in Arizona ask of the voter here. And with the voter participation and the voter responsibility, very Madisonian, by the way.
Yes, indeed.
James Madison. It seems like there's a lot less room for error and a lot less room for government shenanigans. And am I picking up on a theme here? Does that sound right to both you and Dr. McClure?
Sounds right to me. Doctor?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The responsibility initially lies with the voter.
Yeah.
Okay. And his or her ability to request a mail-in ballot, to show up, to make sure it's returned by, 7 o'clock. I think I said 7:30 previously, but it should have been 7 o'clock the day of the election. It is the role of the voter to do that. Yeah. Very Madisonian, to your point. Once it's out of the voter's hands, however, there are still safeguards in place, whether they are online, electronic tabulation backed up by paper ballots, structured pre-canvassing. We talked about they're counting votes ahead of time, and you can watch it online as to whether yours has been set aside or whether yours has been actually counted. So they're processed early. And then, the whole idea of this accountability and transparency with this vote by mail. The other thing that we haven't really talked about that has happened in the state of Florida is voter roll cleanups. Mm-hmm. Each county is responsible for cleaning up their voter rolls by state statute to do that. Some have been better than others. Some have been compelled to do that. We have some problem children in our state. But having said that, voter roll cleanups are critically important. And you think about a state like Florida, we have demographically, we reflect the entire country. We're about, 20% Hispanic, 12 to 15% African American, rural, urban, military, retiree. You pick the demographic. It's here. You have 1,000 people moving here a day. You have 2 different time zones. You have an elderly population, so people are passing away at a different rate. So voter roll cleanups are incredibly important. And that's another component that we have added and have made really, really important to the state of Florida.
Well, I want to touch, because you brought up demographics. Every time a state talks about doing things that require voters to engage with the process themselves, that put responsibility in the hands of the voter, which I think is essential. Our country was not meant to be driven on autopilot. It is meant to be actively engaged with by our citizenry.
Yep.
Whenever we do this, Democrats will cry racism. They cry that we're trying to structurally advantage one demographic over another. What has been the outcome in Florida from all these reforms you put in place?
First of all, how insulting is that to those demographics that they seem to think aren't smart enough to navigate a voting process? If I were one of those demographics, I would be completely insulted by that kind of Democratic knee-jerk response.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, in Florida since 2000, since the Bush v. Gore debacle, voter participation has increased at a faster and higher rate in both the Hispanic communities and the African American communities than in the white community. And so I find that this whole notion of Jim Crow 2.0, which is also what they labeled what Georgia's reforms were done when Major League Baseball took the All-Star game out of Atlanta, the same thing has been found to be true in Georgia. They get higher participation rates with Hispanics and African Americans. So in Florida, we get higher participation rates across the board. And so Hispanics and African Americans in no way are ever disenfranchised with these reforms. These are simple. These are easy to understand. They are voter friendly, and they protect the integrity of one's vote, and they get counted properly.
Well, Seth,
and one of the things, go ahead.
I was going to say, and Seth, you and I have talked about things in this area before, but human nature, we've known for a long time, humans value things they work for. Right. That we have a tendency to not give proper value to the things that are handed to us for free.
Right.
This strikes me as a case of people valuing the vote that they have to work for a little bit.
Right. It actually gets to the word franchise. You are enfranchising people their right and ability and power to exercise the franchise. Couldn't be more exact than in this very example.
Dr. McClure, continuing on, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the safeguards. Our state has looked at what Florida does. The 7 o'clock cutoff is important. How much work do states like Florida, states like Arizona, and others that are looking at these reforms have to do? Because one thing that concerns me, being now in this industry, I started in January with this office. It's had a ton of problems in the past, and I'm going through this. There's an organization, the Election Center has a certification, national certification they call CERA, C-E-R-A, for election officials. So I'm on these classes, I'm doing all this stuff. There is a distinctive attitude from Democrat states that, hey, elections does everything right. We don't need to change. The problem is the public and their perception.
Right.
I think that is just totally wrong. It's been making me absolutely go batty. Florida took the exact opposite approach, didn't they? I mean, really, a lot of these reforms come down to saying we're going to address the concerns that are out there, regardless if they are really a problem or not, because they're a problem because people think they are.
Absolutely. And so what this was obviously didn't happen overnight. Now, we had a whole hat full of troubles in 2000, so it wasn't going to be addressed overnight. But still, every year, the legislature looks at what can be done better, what's not working, what is working. I mean, technology changes, demographics change, a lot of things change in this world, right? And so what we have found is that when you fix the process, which we have fixed in Florida, you don't hear from the left or the right arguing about votes being counted or not being counted. Generally, you'll have some on the edges feeling like they were disenfranchised, and maybe some of the hysterical media will say, oh, these voter machines were closed down in Broward County for 4 hours or whatever. But generally, you don't hear people talk about the process. And what we find, obviously, the James Madison Institute comes from a position of free markets, limited government, personal responsibility, and the protection of private property. But we are nonpartisan, and that is to say that this is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is a voter issue. And when the process works, as it has worked in Florida for a decade now, the left, the hard left, which I distinguish from kind of traditional honest liberals in the Democratic Party, the hard left cannot argue process, which is what they always want to do, to your point. They always want to muddle the process, and they have to argue policy. And we're, at least in Florida, when they're left to argue policy, they lose.
Yeah, Republicans win that fight 99 times out of 100. Dr. Bob McClure, thank you so much. Folks, stay in touch with their work at jamesmadison.org. Breaking Battlegrounds, back with more in just a moment.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. I want to thank our first guest today, Bob McClure. He's doing fantastic work, president and CEO of the James Madison Institute. Florida has really gotten its act together, Seth, over the last 2 decades. I mean, Florida was kind of a joke. If you go back 2 decades ago, I mean, they were really kind of a national joke. And Ron DeSantis gets a ton of credit, as he should, absolutely deserved. But there's been a lot of other people in that state starting before DeSantis who created this turnaround. I would say Florida's the best run state in the country right now.
Very well could be. One of the ways you know this is you do some work with the legislature. I do some work over with some legislators at the Capitol. A lot of them on our team, if you are presenting them with an idea or a concept, they will ask, has Florida done this?
Right.
What has Florida done on this?
Right.
When that's the North Star for good Republican governance, then you're not going to find a brighter one. And, you know, a lot of people were kind of interested in the DeSantis candidacy for the presidency. Truth of the matter is, he's best where he is right now.
He is a brilliant governor.
Yeah.
Brilliant governor. And that's why, by the way, we don't know all the field yet, but I think I would have a hard time if I were living in Florida not voting for Casey DeSantis, because I know how close she's been to her husband's time as governor and how active she's been. I would love to see another 8 years of the DeSantis legacy in Florida, because I think you're just locking in the brightest future for that state. And hopefully here in Arizona, we turn things around and we get a Republican governor in there who's worth their salt.
Do you have a sense of the Virginia governor's race at this point? Is it tilting our way a little bit more because of the late?
I think it's closing a little bit, but for whatever reason,
Spanberger counts.
Spanberger, I mean, first, she basically can't lose this thing, apparently, because she's saying all these things that are that to me come across as, you're a sociopath, lady. If you can't just, like, you don't even have to denounce Jay Jones, the attorney general candidate who fantasized about killing the 2-year-old infant children of the GOP majority leader. You can't even withdraw your endorsement of him.
This is what shows such a vice grip the Democratic Party has in its wedding itself to this anti-law enforcement ideology. You won't find any Democrats doing what the most successful Democrat did, which was a Sister Soldier moment with Bill Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, on this very issue, calling out someone who was in favor of killing cops in that case.
Right.
What would it cost her? I bet her numbers would go up if she were to actually denounce Mr. Jones, J. Jones. But they have this ideological vice grip that they can have, as the 60s radicals said, no enemies to the left.
Very clearly based on polling, and I've looked at some issues polling there, right? The two areas where Winsome Sears has an advantage, essentially, over Spanberger are on policing and boys in the girls' locker room, right? You watched the debate last night. Spanberger stand firm on both of those issues. Stand firm. She tried to walk around her endorsement of J. Jones, but she didn't withdraw it. She is standing firm on all of this. Oh. And unfortunately, in a lower turnout election, and Virginia tends to be, the part of the problem with Virginia is that so much of the electorate are government employees from D.C., from their own institutions, from all that, that it skews the vote, right? Especially in these off-year elections, which they do for...
It does. The unfortunate thing for me is that the makeup of the Republican ticket would otherwise be everything the Democrats by identity politics would want. You have an African-American immigrant at the top of the ticket running with a gay man married to another man, married to a man, which is kind of an interesting place for the Republican Party to be, and there will be more of it if they will just allow us to have it.
With a Hispanic AG candidate on the Republican side.
Also true. Right. So this notion that we are the party of racists and bigots is settled, I think, has been settled for a long time, but it's right in the face of the electorate of Virginia right now, and I think they have a lot to apologize for in the Democratic Party. I think we have nothing to apologize for.
I agree 100%. I want to continue part of this discussion because I wanted to go on a longer tangent. We only have about 30 seconds left in this, so I want to save some of it for the podcast. But I want to talk about whether Barry Weiss's new role at CBS starts to change the national narrative. Does that have the power to maybe start moving the media back to the center? I don't know. Yeah. But I think that's an interesting topic. I wanted to discuss. In fact, I brought with me two posts, one from CNN and one from the CBS, comparing their coverage of Gaza today and what they're saying. Very, very different. So stay tuned for that, folks. If you're not downloading the podcast, be sure you do that. Go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote, Substack, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. We are there. You should also be going to the iHeartRadio app and tuning in to Seth's show, because I think he's got frankly, the most intelligent show on radio. And we're coming back with more here in just a moment.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Congressman Addison McDowell. He is a friend of the program and here to talk about the shutdown. He represents North Carolina's 6th Congressional District. Congressman, I know you've got a lot on your plate. Democrats are really pushing hard, for this health care for illegals and for this massive additional subsidy for Obamacare. Give us the latest on the shutdown and where things stand right now.
The latest on the shutdown is actually pretty simple. It's that the Democrats are lying to the American people and not taking they're not taking into account what they actually voted for in the House and what they voted against in the Senate. In the House, they voted to shut the government down. we offered a clean funding bill, a short-term one, that would keep the government open. They all voted against that in the House. It was a bipartisan passage, but almost every Democrat voted against that. Then in the Senate, they have almost exclusively, again, voted to do the same thing, and they voted to shut the government down. So it's pretty simple that the Democrats have voted to shut the government down. They voted not to pay our soldiers and our troops and our ICE agents. But Republicans have all voted to keep the lights on because we're not going to be held hostage by Chuck Schumer to give health care to illegal aliens.
And so in the House, you passed a clean CR. I still think, despite the fact that every year we end up in one of these fights, and this is part of the discussion, a lot of people don't know what that means. Can you explain that very quickly?
Sure. So it just continues the funding level that was previously enacted. And so Democrats have actually voted for this exact thing 13 times before. They did it all while Joe Biden was the president, but now because they all have Trump derangement syndrome, they want to shut the government down and pick a fight with the president. And we're not going to cave to them. We're not going to let them hold the American people and federal workers hostage so that they can, get all of their pet projects. That's not how this is going to work. But, I'm somebody that doesn't want to govern by CR. I want to get back to regular order and do the appropriations process. And so in the House, we have actually passed all of the appropriations bills, and we're ready to go to get President Trump's funding levels set in stone so that we can stop with the Biden funding levels. And so that's what we're saying is we're going to do a short 7-week funding bill so that we can finish the negotiations on the appropriations bills. And that's what we want to do, and we want to get the lights on in the government as quick as we can.
Congressman Seth Leibsohn here. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for all your good service. One of the things that I have been dreaming of with each government shutdown that seems to be so routine right now is that it might catalyze a spirit in the American people to realize so much of government is so unnecessary after all. And Gallup came out with a poll this week showing Americans' confidence in a lot of federal agencies is at its lowest level yet. Are we asking too much of the American people to look at some of these shutdowns and really have a serious reconsideration of the size and scope of government generally and get to the business of actually getting into some serious trimming down and some serious cuts? Or is that, as I say, asking too much of the Americans right now?
No, I don't think that that's too much to ask of the American people. I just think that we don't need to have that conversation with the government shutdown because there are important jobs, there are important people that work for our federal government that do a great service to our country. They work very hard and they're good people. I do have some discomfort with the fact that we have anyone that is considered non-essential to our government because that's our tax dollars. But that's not a conversation we need to have with our soldiers not getting paid. We need to make sure that we have that conversation regularly, which is something that the Washington establishment and the swamp haven't done for many, many years, maybe as long as I've been alive. And the result of that is $37 trillion in debt. So what we need to do is we need to open the government back up, and then absolutely, yes, we need to have that conversation. But Republicans have already been doing that. You look at the working families tax cut. We got rid of a bunch of unnecessary things. We passed the first rescissions package from the president. I don't think we've done that in 50 years. And so Republicans are serious about this, and we want to do that. We all believe in a small scope of government. Conservatives do, and so we want to make sure that every single worker for the federal government does a service, they do it well, and we don't need to pay 3 people to do the same job. And so that's what we need to look at. We just don't need to do it when our soldiers aren't getting paid.
Congressman, a moment ago, you were talking about the return to regular order, the fact that the House, under the Republican leadership, has passed and is finalizing passing a lot of the normal spending bills in normal order. That's one of the things. We talk about cutting the deficit, but the way out of the deficit is both cuts and economic growth. One of the barriers, I think, to economic growth has been uncertainty, that the markets can't predict government, next 12 months. How important is it to finally start getting the House back to that regular order?
I think it's incredibly important. And, you look at things like the working families tax cut that we passed, that provided a lot of certainty because we said, hey, look, the tax hike that was going to happen, we're not going to let that happen. And a lot of people were very worried about that for many years because they knew that it was going to sunset exactly when it did. And the federal government, we need to do a great job of providing certainty to businesses in our country so that they can thrive, so that they can give great, good-paying jobs to men and women of this country. And if the government can't get anything done, I can see how that would be a problem. Now, the important thing to remember, though, is that the last 10 months, Republicans, especially in the House, have been airtight. We have worked together as a team, and we have governed well. And I think that is something the American people are going to see, and they're going to realize that, okay, when we elect Republicans, they do the job they told us they would do, and they stick together and work as a team. And that's something that I've been very proud of as I've come into Congress, that we're working together and we're actually getting things done. I mean, it's win after win after win, and I'm fired up, and I hope that Chuck Schumer will give up on this project of trying to appease the woke liberal base and AOC, who he's scared is going to primary him, so that we can get back to work. Because we're making good on a lot of promises that President Trump and Republicans in Congress made, and I'm ready to get back to work.
That's an important point, because I personally, Seth, do not think this shutdown would be happening at all if Chuck Schumer were not looking down the barrel of a primary from a candidate he thinks will beat him.
This to me, and Congressman, I don't know if you want to comment on this or not, but this to me is the greatest farce I can see from here in Arizona. You have Chuck Schumer, who's worried about a primary 2 years out, and not this next election cycle, but the election cycle after that. And he looks older. He's younger than Donald Trump. He looks older than Donald Trump. He's going to be older yet. Can someone just tap Chuck Schumer on the shoulder and say, you've been in Congress since 1981. It's been a nice run. You don't need to be worried about these things. Thanks for your service, and let's move on, for goodness sakes.
The only comment I'll make is that in 1981, I was negative like 13 years old. And so if Chuck, you've been around too long, my friend. But the last thing we need is Senator AOC or President AOC. Like that cannot happen. And so I just think it's very ironic that in March, Chuck Schumer said a government shutdown will be catastrophic. We cannot do that. We have to keep the lights on. And then he got hammered by the radical left, and now all of a sudden he's like, you know what? We're going to shut the government down. And then he said, it makes me very, very angry that Chuck Schumer sitting there in his office with his glasses down low, and he's talking, and he's so proud. Yeah. He's saying it's getting better for us every day, us being the Democrats. That's what he's saying that. But what he doesn't understand, because he's a limousine liberal from New York, is that the American people are suffering, and you think you're doing great. That it's backwards, and the calculus that he's using to come up with that is outrageous. And I think that's a symptom of him being in federal politics since baseball was founded. Just it's time to move on.
We were shooting hoops into peach baskets when he got elected the first time. We are speaking with Congressman Addison McDowell of North Carolina's 6th Congressional District. Congressman, to carry on to a point you just made about Chuck Schumer saying the longer this goes on, the better it is for us. My one concern is that Democrats we know are really good at unified messaging, and they're saying exactly and only two things, right? They're saying healthcare costs are going to double if you don't do what we want. And then they're saying reopen the House. And I worry a little bit that they're winning more of the public opinion than they should with that. And that our response, we tend to be more technical on our side. We tend to want to be more accurate, be better truth tellers, instead of just saying the House has done its job, Chuck Schumer needs to do his, and repeating that on autopilot for however long it takes. Do we need to get better at focusing our messaging?
I don't know if that's the way that I would categorize it, but I think that the big difference is that they are dishonest and we are honest. And, that's the big thing here, is that we're telling the truth. And, as long as Democrats want to lie, and we'll just keep telling the truth. Now, the thing that gets tricky, and I'm obviously not talking about you guys here, but the legacy media is also on the side of the Democrats.
Right.
And so we not only have to combat the messaging of the Democrat members of the House and the Senate, but we also have to combat the messaging of MSNBC and CNN. And so it is a little bit of a challenge, but I think that the everyday Americans who want to know the truth and who believe what Republicans are saying and who know that we are telling them the truth, those folks show up to vote, and they obviously did that in November. But we've got to make sure that our message is succinct and that it is clear, and that we've got an answer to the Democrats' lies. That isn't just, well, they're lying. We've got to be able to talk about things in a way that is clear to the American people. But I do believe that we live in a world where if you tell the truth and you have a good message, the American people like that, and we're going to keep doing it.
Do we have – I want to shift topics a little bit here while we have about 2 minutes left here with you, Congressman. Obviously, big news breaking in the last few days regarding the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza. President Trump – some people calling for the Nobel. The actual peace agreement didn't happen until after they had voted, so hopefully he would win that next year. But do you believe that this peace will be able to stick going forward? And how important is it for the U.S. to continue to lead the role in brokering that peace?
That's a great question, and I do want to highlight something that our majority leader, Steve Scalise, pointed out, that they gave Barack Obama a Nobel Peace Prize just for getting elected president.
Right.
And Donald Trump has just accomplished what many tried to do before. And it took an incredible team with Secretary Rubio and others, and they did a fantastic job. Now, I pray that this peace will last, but as long as the United States is willing to come to the table and help with these negotiations, I think we should, because the world is a safer place when we're there. But the really big key here is that we've got to do exactly what Pete Hegseth is doing at the Department of War, and we've got to make our warfighters scary again, because I want the entire world to look at the United States military and say, you know what, we're not messing with that, and we're not messing with their friends. Because under Joe Biden, we had this woke, climate-worshiping military apparatus that nobody was afraid of anymore, and that played out. And now, one by one, President Trump is ending these wars that have been going on for decades, and I'm grateful for that, but we've got to be strong again.
Joe Biden was literally running ads for our military that made them more attractive to attack for our enemies. Like, he was putting them up on a pedestal to be knocked off in the worst way possible. This is an important change. Congressman, last word here. How do folks stay in tune with you and all the work you're doing?
Well, we're on social media, pretty much everything at Rep McDowell, and you can visit our congressional website at mcdowell.house.gov.
Fantastic. Addison McDowell, thank you so much. We always appreciate having you on the program. Look forward to having you back again soon.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Breaking Battlegrounds is out.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, ho, ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.
All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Breaking Battlegrounds. Chuck Warren out of studio today, so joining me, Seth Leibsohn. He is the host of the Seth Leibsohn Show every day, 3 to 6 p.m. here. If you're in Arizona or just on your iHeart app, go check that show out. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to probably offend some people. I don't listen to a lot of talk radio. I do a lot of reading, right? Your show, Seth, is like one of the only ones I tune into because everyone else is just repeating something I've heard. You tend to get geeky in the way that I do.
Well, you're kind. That you don't call me or email me to complain tells me I'm over target then, because you're one of the smartest people I know. It's a delight to be here with you. Actually.
Well, occasionally I do call into your show and I'm like, wait, I gotta say something.
It's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
I want to thank both of our guests today, Dr. Bob McClure. I could have gone on for the whole hour with him talking about elections because I think Florida's really elections in every other area. They're just knocking it out of the park right now. And Congressman Addison, McDowell, always appreciate having him on the program. They got a heck of a fight going on there. Yeah. But I want to talk about some other things in the news. And I know for folks who don't know the two of us, we are both members of the tribe.
Red Sea Pedestrians.
Red Sea Pedestrians, that's correct. That's a great term. I actually hadn't heard that one before.
I think it's from The Life of Brian, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's right.
I need to rewatch that. It's been so young.
Yeah. I'll give you a list of 10 movies for just the canon of understanding my weird humor.
I think I've probably seen about 7 of them.
I'm sure you have. It's that last mile that just gets you.
Right, yeah. Speaking about the last mile.
Yeah.
Gaza.
Yeah.
Here's my problem with this. And I love President Trump, and I love that his instinct, and it's 100%. Folks, the man believes in peace. He believes in peace very deeply. I'm concerned, though, that when you're dealing with that particular population, that his experience in dealing with the Arab world is dealing with the mercantile class that operates at his level, right? The business people. They're not the same as the citizens of Gaza who have been brainwashed for 30 years now to just be desperate to kill Jews.
Right.
I really regret, frankly, that Israel didn't wake up on October 8th and just carpet bomb that problem out of existence once and for all. And I know I'm getting in trouble for saying that, but I'm saying it anyway.
No, everyone I know who doesn't spend most of their time behind a microphone says it too, Sam, because they understand that the idea of peace in the Middle East is a dream, obviously, but it's, as most dreams don't come true. Speaking of Old Testament, Jeremiah, peace, peace, but there is no peace. Gentlemen will cry for it, but it doesn't happen. The best you can have is survival of the innocent, survival of the civil. And if this does bring a reprieve, this peace plan for a little bit, well, that's better than obviously ongoing motile war day in, day out. So if it does give a reprieve, great. Certainly the Israeli soldiers need a rest. But I don't want anyone to be fooled that what you said, as long as those facts are on the ground, as long as radical Islamic ideology is perverting the brains of young people from before kindergarten, you are going to have never-ending war, and hopefully what you will have is a decent series of outsiders like Donald Trump who can see clearly through the European anti-Semitism that supports organizations like Hamas, and quite honestly, the entrenched State Department bureaucrats at Foggy Bottom who believe that you can settle everything in the Middle East over coffee and cake. Moshe Aaron's put it best, former defense minister of Israel. He said, too many people think the Middle East is the Middle West, and it just isn't.
It is not at all. And what's been really interesting to me, especially really since Donald Trump's first election, 2016, there has been a dramatic sea change in the outlook towards Islamic fundamentalism among the leadership of the Gulf states, barring Qatar. Right. So Saudi, the UAE, Egypt, they're looking at this going, we're done with these people. There are no protests happening in those capitals to anything Israel's done. And interestingly, I've not heard anyone bring this up, Seth, so I'm throwing it to you. Where are the West Bank protests? They don't even care about what Israel's doing.
Right. The thing that Donald Trump did was he called a major bluff that had been going on for probably about 50 years, which is that you could not have more regional peace unless you settled the Palestinian problem first. He turned that on his head because he knew, having worked with so many of these leaders, what they know, which is that the Palestinian effort and movement is not just a headache to them, it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a headache and a joke to them that they want nothing to do with.
Oh, there would be high-fiving in Riyadh if they woke up tomorrow and learned that Israel had eliminated Gaza.
This is why Arafat and the PLO have been kicked out of every other country they've ever tried to settle in. This is not a movement most of the Arab states want. And Donald Trump understood that. And that's why he understood that if we stand with Israel and show the cards of the West very strongly, yes, we're going to move the damn embassy.
Yeah.
And you can hand-wring all you want and predict more violence all you want. It's not going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen because we are actually stating a claim of where we are.
And the source of that violence isn't changing.
That's right. That's right.
It's not growing. It's not shrinking. It's just there.
Right. That's exactly right.
We've got some time left. I
was just going to make one small point. When there was a debate in this country as to whether to go after the Barbary pirates,
right?
John Adams and Jefferson. Adams wanted less so. Jefferson wanted to do it, and they had some correspondence. And finally, Jefferson persuaded Adams that it had to be done, and Adams said, "Okay, then go do it. But understand, once you fight them, you will be fighting them for the rest of your life."
Mm-hmm. I don't know that. My counter to that, and after many lifetimes since then, has been that if you don't fight them, you're fighting them for the rest of your life too.
Also.
I hate to say this, and I don't. I'm sorry. I'm kind of gotten to the point of being unapologetic about this, but Islam is the last major unreformed religion. If Christianity were based on the Old Testament and people followed it to the letter, Christianity would be a barbaric thing in the modern world, but it's not. It reformed. Judaism never had to reform because non-evangelical. It is not a religion of conquest in any way. Christianity left that behind. It took like 2,000 years to fully leave that behind, but they did. Either Islam does that or it just needs to go away.
Yeah, and that's why I think your point just prior to that is right. You're going to fight them either way because it is a religion of bellicosity. It is a religion of warfare. It is a religion of convert or die. And until people understand that, they will only have the choice of converting and dying or fighting for that survival.
Speaking of conversions,
yes, sir.
Barry Weiss and CBS News.
Yeah.
This is a little bit lighter topic to end our day here. Think she's going to convert CBS News? The early indications are maybe.
Maybe. It depends on how relevant CBS News continues to be in the minds of most Americans. I think it matters on the margins for sure, and I think it matters to a certain, what we used to call, is it still called the Osceola class, the Washington, D.C., New York corridor? I think it still matters.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like we were saying about the Virginia gubernatorial ticket, Barry Weiss is someone the left should not be afraid of if the left is honest. This is a liberal woman who is an editorial writer at the New York Times, who is married to another woman, who is not a conservative, who is not a Trump supporter, and boy, she drives them nuts. Why? Because she doesn't hate Jews.
Well, and I'm gonna show the difference right here. This is a headline today from CNN. It's been, quote, "It's been 2 years since Israel launched its war in Gaza, and life in the enclave has never been harder."
Israel launched a war in Gaza, did they?
According to CNN.
Okay.
Here is today's...
Israel launched a war in Gaza. Okay.
That would be news to every person in Israel.
Including Gaza.
And every person who pays attention to the truth, except it's gospel at CNN.
Okay.
Here's the CBS News take today. Israel's retaliatory war in Gaza against Hamas, which the U.S. and Israel consider a terrorist organization, has killed more than 67,000 people, according to the Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health, which does not distinguish between civilian and combatant casualties.
That's a sea change.
That's not a sea change. That's part in the Red Sea. We've done it twice now.
Yeah. I don't teach it the Cronkite School at ASU. But if I did teach at the Cronkite School at ASU, I would put both headlines in front, both of those leads in front of the students for a quiz. There's one right answer and there's one wrong answer.
Right.
Yeah. She's going to teach journalism to CBS. Perfect.
And I truly believe that there is an appetite for real journalism. And if she does that CBS becomes the ascendant network, and there's pressure on the others to start complying. Maybe not on Fox News and MSNBC because there's space for a partisan network. But the rest of them have to start coming back to reality.
The appetite is there. She proved it in 2 years with 3 people, her lover, now wife, and sister. 3 of them built an enterprise that she just sold for $150 million because it decided to deliver nonpartisan, interesting news and commentary.
Was that the best woke slapdown, $150 million woke slapdown in history?
I think it probably was. Yeah.
I mean, because they drove her out of the New York Times for it was the senator Tom Cotton's op-ed.
Tom Cotton wrote a U.S. senator dared to write an op-ed that the New York Times dared to publish.
Right.
Yeah.
And they drove her out of the profession, thought they drove her out of the profession, and her turnaround is to create a news organization that's widely respected among honest people and that sells to CBS for $150 million.
You know, it's funny, and it's a liberal outlet, the Free Press.
Yes.
It actually is. I was discussing
it's a left-of-center outlet.
It's what the New Republic was in the early 1980s.
Right.
It has some conservatives, like it did Charles Krauthammer and Fred Barnes, but the liberalism is interesting.
It is.
And more. I don't know if more conservatives than liberals read it, but I know a lot of conservatives, including me, who do.
It's intelligent.
Yeah, it's very intelligent.
It's intelligent leftism, and I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss being able to have a discussion with the other side that isn't stupid.
Right. That's not stupid or yelling.
Yeah.
They don't scream at you, and they respect your alternative opinion. It's what dialogue and political and intellectual pursuits should be.
Every other conversation I have,
University Online. Sorry.
Yeah. Every other conversation I have with the left today is basically like, "You're a racist." Well, I'm Jewish. You're a racist white supremacist Jew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you're a colonial settler. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They will find a way to do it one way or another. And yeah, if she can help rescue responsible civic dialogue, that would be great. But it is her party that has that problem. It's not ours.
It is not ours.
I give you all the violence and of their rhetoric.
You just made me want to reclaim the term conquistador.
Yeah.
We should stop saying we should stop allowing the left to say colonialists and just say we were conquistadors. Leave it alone. We won.
It would also bring great Spanish music to them.
100%.
Right?
Seth, thank you so much for joining me in studio today.
Honored.
I really appreciate it.
Total honor. Thank you.
For all of our guests, for the crew here at Breaking Battlegrounds, we love having you on board, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
My name is Patrick Byrne, domestic extremist threat number 1. Or not. Perhaps I'm just somebody who's willing to say the emperor has no clothes. You can decide for yourself.
Patrick Byrne.
They're following everything that you've been working on.
Yes, sir. Understood.
You may know of me as the CEO of this $2 billion e-commerce company, but really, I have this other life.
You have an unusual relationship with the United States government?
Sir, why are you bringing this up?
The FBI needed me to set up a bribe.
We can't have agents running around creating crimes.
You know, it would violate too many rules for us to do it, but if you're willing to go do it, we'll look the other way.
Hello, my name is Maria Butina.
Then I would make it happen. Instead of being happy, they say,
just let it play. All right.
What?
Let it play?
Now, I know this may look like the Deep Throat scene from All the President's Men, but where do you think that stuff comes from? These things happen.
What you think you know.
I was encouraged to have a relationship.
What you think you are.
And it's heated up.
I'm going to meet the Trumps.
I was starting to realize the feds were using Maria to smudge up the Republican Party. And they were using me to use Maria. And this truth is going to be so explosive.
Erase every moment from your memory.
If you do this long enough, you begin to feel like an enemy of your own country.
to arrest this Russian grad student so they could say, no, there is an actual Russian at the center of our Russian collusion drama. A civilization all begins with the rule of law. And once that gets corrupted, it's like my worst fears had just been realized. I don't know, maybe I'm just being sensitive.